Now, this is not to say, like, if you're going through depression or if you're going through a really rough time, I'm not going to ask you to be the Dalai Lama and go, yes, I'm at peace no matter what. Wherever you are is where you are. And I should say, we can look at the people who are going through such hell right now in Ukraine, who are fleeing their homes, whose homes have been destroyed, and go, I'm going to just sit here and count my blessings because boy, do I have a lot of them. Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, I interview peak performing world changers in the creative, social impact, and earth conservation spaces. If you like what you hear on this episode, you're going to want to check out the bonus mini episode you can access if you become a member of my coffee club. If you do, you'll get access to bonus episodes, new art, new writing, and other fun benefits at buymeacoffee.com/Isolde T. See the show notes for more details. And now, let's get on with the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Super happy, honored, and amazed that you've taken the time to be here with us today or tonight, today or tonight. Those are the only two. I am very, very loopy right now and stone cold sober, so now you know. I am here with the fabulous Megan Vasilis, Sergio Tejada, and Alan Fessenden. We are all working through Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, and we are now on week 10, recovering a sense of self-protection. What's been happening is we've been going through a chapter a week, going through the reading, going through the exercises and the tasks that she sets out for you in the book, and we've invited you to come along with us. Now, if you are just joining us for the first time, you can go back to week 1 and work your way through, and then last week we had a little catch-up week so that if you get behind a week, you will be able to still catch up when you come to this week. I am very honored to say that, first of all, I want to welcome Alan, Sergio, Megan. Hi, y'all. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hey.
How's it going, everyone?
And the other thing is that this week, once again, I am taking a back seat, and the awesome Megan Vasilis is going to host us and work through this chapter with us, recovering a sense of self-protection. Megan, take it away.
Yay.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Isolde, for giving me the opportunity to host again.
My pleasure.
This is a really interesting chapter, I thought, and I'm especially excited to host this specific chapter because it ended up being one of my favorites of the book. And in taking kind of that big picture view of this whole project and this course, I wanted to ask each of you about the idea of self-protection. That where do you think it sort of fits into this whole, I guess, this whole project and the course on a whole? Like, why do you think that she chose this point in the course to have a whole chapter just on self-protection, the ways we kind of sabotage ourselves, when we get in our own way, and building barriers to help protect ourselves against that? Isolde, if you want to get us started.
Sure. There are a number of things that I think about that, and it's a great question, I think, Megan. First of all, I think she started this late in the course with this because you might have built some bad habits. You might have uncovered some bad habits, some ways you don't protect yourself, some ways you do give away your energy. So kind of having a come to Jesus moment and going, okay, what are the ways that you're getting in your own way? Have you noticed any? Have you seen some in these previous 9 weeks? So I think there's a lot to be said for, I'm always a know the rules before you break them kind of person. And she kind of led us down this road. And now she's going, okay, this is a come to Jesus moment. Where are you with this? How do you get in your own way? What are the ways in which you might be sabotaging yourself and not protecting yourself enough? So now we get to, with the new knowledge, really work through and figure out what some of those things are. And now we also hopefully have the confidence to look at that part of ourselves, to look at that sort of darker shadow side and go, yeah, I do this. And more importantly, what am I going to do about it? Alan, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for some reason, when you brought this question up, Megan, I was just immediately hit with my my professor's show that I got to work on years ago. It was like the first show I worked on in New York. It was called Tillers, and my professor Fanny Green was the author, and we did like a workshop production of it at the New York Theater Workshop. And I worked on the show, and what I sort of just feel about that sort of Tillers is just like working the soil is kind of like going through the dirt of your artistic creativity, like working through that. And sort of, I always think when you are working or you work towards progress, there's going to be a lot of like you don't know what's going to be churned up in that progress in the cycle to like build up. And so like here it is, we're 10 weeks in, we've done all these like cool things that are exciting to us, and we're dreaming and we're sort of questioning whether we're changing. And then like I don't know about you, but I've felt like this last couple of weeks I've been like starting to go into a sludge. I'm dragging, I'm like resisting, I don't want to do this stuff. And then it's like she's like here, this is what you're going through. So for me, it feels like it's sort of a little omniscient, or like a little bit like, don't worry, this is what happens to us. And these are some of the things that you're going through. So it's like clearly, if you think about it, it was like a system of how to get one place to another, then that people have gone through it before. So it felt well aligned, and I think like Isolde, you make a great point of just like she's being like, this is it, like how are we going to get through it? Like now you can see what you're doing, this is what's happening now, how are we going to get through it? Sergio, what do you think about this sense of self-protection? Why did she put it here, and why now?
So first and foremost, I just want to say congrats to Megan for hosting again. I'm really excited. That's a great way to start. And also, can I just say that I missed you, the crew. Spoilers, but
So much.
spoilers. But our reflection episode, we recorded the weekend before the Monday we usually do it, right? So last Monday, I was really missing the crew, even though I was hanging out with them.
Oh, me
Just
too.
a few days before. Such a great and affable group that I love to speak to regularly. And I'm sorry for that digression. As far as self-protection goes, I feel like she emphasized this, and during this time, like Alan mentioned, is probably a really hard time for a lot of others. I know it has been for me. There's definitely been a slowdown as far as my initiative these last few weeks with the Artist Way. And I think the importance of self-protection is because I'm sure a lot of artists out there like myself are probably filled with a lot of doubt, especially going through this process. And doubt leads to blocking, right? There's many different ways we can block ourselves. So I think that's why she emphasizes that, and self-care being important and vital. And for me specifically, as far as self-protection, it was just more about being more confident of my capabilities and grateful for my efforts, and also realizing what's really stopping me from pursuing certain things, and not just creatively, but in all facets of my life. And I'm all about mindfulness, so I'm happy that this course is helping in that regard. Megan, does that make sense? How do you feel about this?
It absolutely makes sense. I think that's a really interesting response. I think for me, this particular chapter, she leads this section, the first section of the chapter, with the heading "Dangers of the Trail." Like we're on this journey, and there's this pit of vipers that we have to somehow navigate around. And that actually, it felt kind of like an apt comparison in my mind. Like one of the things she says that I thought was really powerful in this section. Hold on, I lost my notes for a second.
Dangers of the trail.
Okay, well, I can't find the quote I was looking for, but basically she is talking about this being kind of a danger at this point in the journey. And for me, that resonated with me a lot, because the last few chapters have been focused on, learning to be in touch with the flow and to open those channels and embrace the feeling of just creating without judgment. And with that, with that process of learning how to be in touch with that part of yourself, there always, for me, has been a danger of coming up against those old blocks, even if you think that you've moved past them in a way. So I find it really interesting and kind of cool that she put this section here at a point where, over the past week or so, I really have started to feel like I haven't been making the progress that I really want to be making. Like, I've opened the channels. I feel like I've had several really significant revelations throughout this process, but through all of that, I felt like I was becoming more blocked, not less. And as I was writing about that in my morning pages the other day, I just kind of realized, oh, that's what this is. This is the pit of vipers, because I opened the channels and now I have to face what's in there. And those blocks are still there. You really have to view them, I think, as a part of you. At least that's how I think about it. And not something that you can really ever entirely conquer, just kind of learn to live with and navigate around. So that's kind of my take on that. And another interesting thing that she talks about here is the idea of blocks. And she defines blocks as kind of a function that basically serves to pull you away from something that you're working on, a goal that you have, but also an object of obsession, things to hyperfixate on in an unhealthy way. And I just wanted to ask each of you if that is how you experience blocks, if that resonates with you. Can we start with Sergio this time?
Sure. Thank you for the pass. Appreciate you. And yeah, like, and just so happy to be with you guys and just hanging out. So excuse the extra positivity. So
wait
yeah,
a minute! Don't ever apologize for positivity.
No, there's
That's
always
awesome.
time for positivity.
There's a first time for everything, right? I'm sorry. I hope every answer isn't like this for me. So she talks about several ways to block yourself, right, in the first segment. And I thought I figured that out, to be honest, throughout this course, the different ways I was blocking myself, that is. But she says, and it's something I circled and was kind of like, oh shit, kind of, excuse me, let's get that.
The explicit, yes. Let me do that right now.
Thank you so much. But she says something that I circled, and it was kind of a oh snap moment, and it has to do with obsession. She says that for others, an obsession with painful love places creative choice outside their hands. Reaching for the painful thought, they become instant victims rather than feel their own considerable power. If only they would just love me. Yeah, definitely felt like, oh shit, after that. That wasn't something that I ever thought about in that kind of way. And so I think for me, this was a very enlightening chapter, or week rather. And I also like that she emphasizes again that it is always fear that leads us into grabbing for a block. And I think that's true for the most part. And I'm sorry if I'm going on a little while. I'm gonna wrap it up here. She does say something towards the end about happiness, and she says, blocked, we know who and what we are. Unhappy people. Unblocked, we may be something much more threatening. Happy. For most of us, happy is terrifying, unfamiliar, out of control, too risky. Is it any wonder we take temporary U-turns? And I've said this before, I feel like I'm more afraid of failing than being happy, but I thought that was really interesting. And I wondered how the rest of the group thought about that. Alan, how did you feel about what Megan asked first and foremost? And happiness. Are you afraid of it?
Happiness. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of talk about what you just talked about, Sergio, because what came to mind was this. I think she talked about either this chapter or last time, just like being in our shame or staying in shame. And I was thinking about that, the phrase that must be so hard for you came to mind when thinking about how we sort of stay in our happy, we avoid happiness. And that phrase to me sort of symbolizes a sense of like voyeuristic pain or something like that. That must be so hard for you, as we imagine someone else's struggles And whether it's hard for them or not, or like, because I sort of think of it as something that comes up at a time when people have dealt with their themselves and they've moved on, and they sort of still have to like be reminded of this difficult part of being, right? And sort of like, we don't just do it to ourselves, but we do it to other people. Like, oh, that must be so hard. And like, we find those little corners of rest where it's like, oh, my life is so hard. You know, like it's I don't want to say poor me syndrome, or like, I don't want to blame people for like feeling that way. Like, but there's like part of my, you know, there's like places where I know where I can just like, okay, it's like, this is not what I want to be, but I understand what this feeling is, and I can sort of momentarily thrive in it. So maybe I'll just stay there and avoid like whatever might make me happier in the long run, right? Sort of immediate experience versus long-term happiness or something. I don't know. I've been thinking about how we sort of hold on to that, to certain shames. And I think, Megan, what you were asking was if feeling blocked feels like a hyper focus on something else. Is that right?
Yeah. If you experience blocks kind of as a hyper focus, or more kind of like Sergio was talking about as a distraction from happiness, just however, does her explanation of blocks and the way she describes blocks, does that feel true to you?
Well, feels what? Say that again.
Does the way she describes blocks as kind of both distractions and obsessions, does that make sense to you? Like how you experience them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have necessarily said that before reading that or hearing that, but I think like like, I know when I am trying to get myself to sit down and write, I just need like one more snack, then and then I'll be able to do it. And like, then I have to prepare that snack, or by the time that snack is over, like I'm ready to sit down, and then I'm like, I guess I need another snack. So like, food is definitely a thing I have to deal with in that regard. And then, you know, I sent my script off to my writing partner, and I've been waiting for her to finish it. I think I spoke about this last week, but like, felt like I couldn't do any work on it. And I was like, I didn't sit in this that long, but I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I think it helped that I talked to my therapist about it too, but because I worked it out. And I was like, well, I guess I could write a different scene that's not for a different episode, or I could do like some other writing. And that's why I started doing that. And so I felt good about that. But that feeling of being trapped, like I definitely previously probably would have just been like, what can I do? What can I do? And just frustrated and got like irritated with my partner, because they have their own life, my writing partner, and they have to do what they need to do. And now this way I got to sort of like, because I could recognize that, I was able to sort of like sidestep it and do it. But yes, to me, that like distraction, like games, you know, I can just play one more part of a game, 5 more minutes of a game, and then it's time to get a drink of water, you know, that can really they can stack up. But enough about me. Let's hear what Isolde feels about this subject. You can talk about happiness, and then whether you identify with the blocks as outlined by our good friend Julia Cameron,
our delightful friend. Even I have some thoughts on this, and some of this is my own. Again, I have issues with her, but I think that, you know, to sound really namby-pamby, so much about this is about honesty and accountability, right? If I am honest with myself, if I hold myself accountable to the things that I said I'd do, then I'm gonna be happy, right? Why? Because I'm super honest. I'm super present where I am, and at that point, happiness becomes a choice. Now, this is not to say, like, if you're going through depression or if you're going through a really rough time, I'm not going to ask you to be the Dalai Lama and go, yes, I'm at peace no matter what. If wherever you are is where you are. And I should say, we can look at the people who are going through such hell right now in Ukraine, who are fleeing their homes, whose homes have been destroyed, and go, I'm going to just sit here and count my blessings because boy, do I have a lot of them. So when I think about it in terms of the macro, if you will, the macrocosm, I'm blessed and I'm happy, doggone it. I'm very excited to be where I am. But I also have to hold myself accountable. So happiness to me means being honest with myself. If I'm not lying to myself, then I have every reason in the world to be happy. As far as being blocked, yeah, I absolutely related to so much of this, and something that workaholism, I guess you say, I'm all about that. I constantly have to be like, I'm going to stop working at midnight, doggone it. Why? Because I've taken on so many projects that I could work till 4 a.m. every day and survive on 2 hours of sleep, which I don't want to do. So I related to them, and I understood what she was talking about, even if, again, so much of, oh, Alan left us. He'll be back. Even if so much of what she's talking about is, again, I really hesitate to go, yes, it's being blocked is because I've lost my faith in God. I can't say that. I can't agree with that's the way to look at it. For me, what's more important is I am blocked, if I'm honest with myself, because I'm standing in my own way. And that gets me back to the foundation of happiness, because like I've said this before, I think here and maybe elsewhere, that rock bottom to me is a positive thing, not a negative thing. And that's because for the first time in a very long time, you're standing on solid ground. Now, it may be way down there somewhere, rock bottom, but you're finally on a stable foundation, and you can pick yourself up and you can start moving forward because you're finally somewhere stable, even if that stable place is really crappy. So again, if I'm honest with myself and I hold myself accountable to the things I said I'd do, then I'm in a different arena as far as blocked or not blocked. And then for me personally, exhaustion is one of my blocks. And some of that, and this is something else to think about, is that she kind of makes it that if you are blocked, that must mean it's kind of your fault. You lost faith with God. You're not being honest with yourself. You're doing whatever it is you're doing to get in your own way. And sometimes you have issues. Sometimes you have, like me with hypothyroidism, I just don't have the energy I'd like to have to do the things I want to do. And my eyes cross and I start falling asleep, So if you've got that stuff going on, I want to remind you to take care of yourself first and foremost. That's super important, right? Creativity is well and good, but you also want to be sure that you're taking care of your health and your life. And that to me is not necessarily a block, even though she kind of intimates that, worrying about money, that's a block. No, you still have to pay your rent, right? Not everyone has the magic that comes in. The magic might not come in. And I cannot say, oh, if you only believe hard enough, it will come in. I don't want to do that to you. I want to say, please take care of yourself, even as you're on this road to artistic and creative recovery. And if it takes you longer than 12 weeks, if it takes you 15 weeks or 15 months, that's okay too. Megan, back to you.
Yeah, I think that really resonates with me too, as someone who's also dealt with some health problems in the past that made it, sometimes really difficult for me to focus on my creative work as much as I wanted to. Mm-hmm. And I thought about that in the context of this over the past week. Like, can I define that even as a block when it's something I don't really have any control over? And it is something that I've really had to think a lot about and find ways to deal with, to manage my energy and to decide, decide really that this is important enough to me that I'm going to do the work to find a way to do it anyway. And also to accept that my way of doing certain things is not going to look like how a lot of other people do it. So I wouldn't really define it in that way as a block, the way she's talking about it. But I also acknowledge, like you're saying, that she doesn't necessarily cover that kind of inclusive ground in that book. She's really talking about her own experience and extrapolating it to as if it should apply to every single person and every single experience. And yeah, I agree with you. I also want to just reiterate that, whatever your experience is, you also deserve to be creative, whatever that looks like for you, even if it doesn't look like the way everyone else is doing it. And even if you have to find other ways to be creative the way you want to do it. But yeah, I think the part of this chapter, this section really that resonated with me a lot is the idea that there are ways, like, I think for me, my blocks tend to be hyperfixations a lot of times. Like I'll put roadblocks in my own way. Like I'll decide, oh, in order for me to write this huge epic fantasy, I have to learn the entire history of the Punic Wars, and then I'll go on down that rabbit hole. And it's really, really easy for me to find tasks like that, to get really, really absorbed in it. It feels good. It feels a lot like I'm doing work. And maybe learning some of that stuff is really important and useful. But at a certain point, and I often go, about 1,000 exits past this point, and it's just distraction. It's just I'm allowing that invisible block, that imaginary block, to stand in my way. And then I think the way past that is really to just keep more of a big picture view on the big project, the big goal, even if you have to break it down into smaller chunks than maybe you imagined to begin with, even if the shape of that goal has to change. So that part of it did resonate with me, the way she talks specifically about that, which leads me to the next section, which I wanted to talk about this with you guys, because in this chapter on recovering a sense of self-protection, she devotes 4 entire pages really on to just like the state of being a workaholic, and a whole quiz also that you can take and sort of use it to identify some workaholic habits that you might have. And for me personally, I think workaholism is one of my biggest blocks, like I was just talking about. Really, I do that a lot with a lot of different things. It's really, really easy for me to use work because work feels good. It feels like I'm being really industrious and motivated and purpose driven. And really, I'm using it a lot of times to distract myself. But I wondered how each of you feels about that for because you're all different artists. You're all really approaching this from very different positions than I am. I wondered if the space she devotes to this particular block in this chapter makes sense to you, and if your experience with workaholism resonates with that at all. Let's start with Alan.
Oh, thanks. I apologize if you missed me. I did go lose my internet there for a second, so hopefully I didn't miss too much.
You missed nothing really. We sat back and had tea, but yeah, I think it's windy here today, and I think that's messing some with the internet.
Well, I hopefully won't have that problem again. However, I'll be working diligently this entire time to not let it happen. No, workaholism. This was an interesting one because I definitely didn't see myself inside of it as like a workaholic person, and I did the quiz, and I'm just like, well, I don't really fit this mold. And but what I did sort of figure out is like, I do have a definite feeling like I should always be working, and I never, like, unless I leave town, then I don't think of giving myself a break. I should always be doing something else and like, so it's kind of like this constant disappointed feeling in myself because I'm like not often sure what I'm supposed to be doing, but I know it's not like doing nothing at any given moment. So I'm just constantly feeling bad and not knowing what to do on certain levels, or knowing like I want to do this thing, but it's not what I really want to do right now. So I kind of took away from this that I really needed to like define my sort of work hours, or like when I wanted to work on different things, and make more of a sort of schedule for myself in that way. And it's tough because like what I do is freelance and I get odd jobs here and there, and so that can be kind of distracting and unpredictable, and people can ask you to work when you weren't planning to, right? And like sometimes it's just like you got to eat, and
True.
and that feeling of needing to eat is so resonant with me because I came to New York and didn't really have anything to my name. I didn't have a place to stay. I was just like, let's figure this out. And I just remember living on the, on like $20 a week if I could get that from like some some temp work or something. And then when I started to get work and I was like, oh, this is okay. I remember going on a date with this girl and I had to meet her after work, but the work I was doing was like unpredictable. So they're like, we need you to stay later. And I was too desperate to make as much money as I could that I couldn't say no. I couldn't be like, well, I gotta go. It's I've made plans, which like nowadays I feel more comfortable. Like, well, I have plans. Like I gotta meet those plans, and this will have to wait. People will have to wait for things sometimes, and that's not always what people want to do. But you have to take care of yourself. So I definitely was like, what? I don't feel like I have this issue, but I think it hits me in a different way, and there's definitely things I need to work on. Sergio, let's pass it your way. How did you identify with this workaholism quiz and everything else that's in here?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying that hearing about how tough times were for you when you first moved to NYC, that's hard. That's hard to hear, and I can relate in a way. I'm sure a lot of us can. But I'm really happy that things have gotten better for you in those regards. I'm sure you're eating and munching, eating some good food. You have a beautiful apartment, which we've been to. Yeah. Thanks again. And I'm sure things will only continue to get better for you. And also, I wanted to say that before, I really like that Isolde and Megan emphasized that the baby steps can be quite transformative. So I just want to reiterate that for you, listener. And this segment, I don't think it resonated with me too much. It's not too much of a problem for me, choosing to work over being creative. I feel like being creative is work, can be work, and I don't mean that in like any kind of negative connotation, or I just mean that when I'm working on something creative, I feel like I'm working on something, right? I did take the quiz though. Only number 11 is the one that really stuck out to me, of course. And that's the one that had to do with procrastination. And I feel like when I thought about it again, as I've thought about many times during this course, and then reading through the segment, it did make me just feel like I have to get a little more organized with my efforts and how I approach those things. And I love to make lists. I love to write goals out and such. So I just have to find a way to incorporate that into my creative endeavors a little more, if that makes sense. Isolde, how about you? How are you feeling about this in this segment?
Yeah. So as I said, I actually wrote down in my notes from the chapter workaholism quiz. Yikes. And literally, I actually said that as I was taking the quiz, because a lot of them, a lot of those resonated with me. A lot of if you're going through the book with us, you will note the quiz and you will see what I mean, that I personally am, I'm an overachiever. And I'm an overworker, and I will work myself to exhaustion for a good cause. And that's a problem because, like what you just said, Sergio, that creative work is work, and work I love doesn't feel like work, but I can still do it too much, right? So if it's creative work, or if it's work where I'm going into a school to teach them about how to save the earth, or if I'm going to go do a workshop on creativity and collaboration at a company, it's work. It's not me writing my books. It's not me writing songs or practicing guitar. But the thing is, because I make money going and playing at schools and doing music, or because I make money selling my books, that's part of my work. So it's a little confusing if you are someone who's sort of halfway between working, let's say, a day job versus getting to do your creativity full time. When you start doing your creativity full time, guess what? It's work. That's what it is. And so going, oh, I'm overworking. Well, you could also be overworking in your creative life. And I think the key for me is to go, it's not about whether or not it's work or not creative work. It's about whether or not I take time away from it to just relax, right? For me, relaxation happens when I make the choice to relax, when I don't bring my computer, when I go to some tropical island if I can afford it, and I go on vacation, I sit by the pool and I look at the sky, and it takes the time to do that. And you have to prioritize play and relaxation, even if the work that you're doing is work you love, and even if the work that you're doing is your full-time creative work, you still have to prioritize time away from it where you can just enjoy yourself and unclench. And that's one of the things that happens to me is when I go to, let's say, Key West. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode. It takes me time to relax. Like I can no longer used to go for 2 nights. I can't go for 2 nights now. I need to go for 3 or more, because it takes me at least the first night to relax enough to relax. And that's because I'm wound pretty tightly the rest of the time, because I feel like there's always something that I could be doing. The other part of this is, I love what she said. She said, an alcoholic gets sober by abstaining from alcohol. A workaholic gets sober by abstaining from overwork. And that's the thing is if you are an addict, in this case, a workaholic, if you are addicted to working, you can't stop working. So you have to figure out a way to manage the division between work and overwork. And it's subtle and it can kick your butt. So you need to be very careful if you are like me and you tend to overwork and then get yourself really exhausted, and then you don't know how you're going to actually make the 15-foot walk to your bedroom. So you need to be careful about that. The other thing is something I think you said, Alan, about people wanting you to stay late when you were like, I have a date, but I don't feel like I can say no. Here's something I've noticed. Setting boundaries makes them respect you more. It's a weird thing that happens, but I didn't set boundaries for a long time with that kind of thing, and I was always available, and so they treated me like I was always going to be available. But the second I started going, actually, I'm not available then, they went, oh, well, why not? Because I have this X thing to do. And it took a little bit of time to train them, but then, hey, they started going, oh, are you available then? Not you need to stay, but are you going to be available? And that's a different mindset, and helping them make that shift helped my life get better. And the last thing I want to say about this is there's a wonderful browser app called, it's a Chrome extension also called Toggle Track. And it is a fabulous, super easy way to track how you are spending your time. You just input it and it starts timing you. And when you're ready to stop, you hit a little button on your Chrome browser or however you want to do it. There's also an app. And you tell it that you're done working on this thing, and it will tell you how many hours you spent on each of the things that you're trying to work on. And I will put the link to it in the page notes, in the show notes, because it's been really helpful to me to go, oh yeah, I've spent some time on this thing that I really didn't even want to spend time on, but I spent time on it, and seeing it helps me evaluate it, and that helps me redirect my energy to somewhere where I want it to go, rather than on somewhere where it kind of ends up, if you see what I mean. Megan, back to you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because it's so easy for me to kind of lose sight of the boundary there between work that's important and will bring me a little bit closer to whatever goal I'm working towards, and work that really doesn't matter, that's just busy work that I'm just sort of creating for myself as a barrier. And another thing is that in the quiz, question 18 is, I allow myself downtime to do nothing.
Oh, yes.
Seldom, often, never. And this really sparked a lot of insight for me, because in my own health journey, I've had to realize that not only is my creativity dependent on having some time within my week to actually schedule nothing time, but it's essential to my health as well. For many, many, many years, I think just coming from the type of culture that I came from, an immigrant family where, hard work is really, it was crucial to our survival for my whole life, really. And it's been incredibly easy to sort of take that mindset and apply it to every aspect of my life now in ways that could be really counterproductive. And it's still incredibly hard for me to do that. I mean, I do schedule the time, but it's the first thing I sacrifice, honestly, every single week still. If I'm feeling pressed for time, that is the first thing that I just decide isn't worth it. And whenever I do that, whenever I make that sacrifice, I always notice a drop in actual productivity in a certain way. And I don't mean that just in terms of output, but in how much I'm able to, say, enjoy writing my book, or really fully engage with all of my different projects. If I don't have my nothing time, where I have no expectations on myself, then it's really, really difficult for me to maintain like the higher level of focus that I want to have in my deepest work, I think. So yeah, that's kind of where I landed with that. Those were all really, really interesting responses. I thank all of you for sharing and for your vulnerability there. So the next thing I wanted to talk about from this chapter is the concept of drought. And for me, this was kind of harrowing to read in some ways, because she talks about it very much as a natural process that you need to kind of just learn to move through. And that makes sense to me logically, but emotionally, as a creative person, I am terrified of this idea of just like running dry of ideas. Because we as creatives, we live and die by our ideas. So I wanted to ask each of you how this window that she's offering into a world in which you can kind of just expect drought, it's unavoidable, and you can also use morning pages and other coping mechanisms to sort of help guide you through that process and come out the other side. Does that resonate with you? Have you successfully done that in the past? Or if you haven't, do you kind of trust enough in the process now that it will work for you the next time you're in a period of drought? Let's start with Isolde.
I don't know that I've ever had a drought. I've had frustration. I've had blocks. I've had, I'm not good enough to do this, but I have never actually gone, I have no ideas. So, and in fact, Rich, my husband, says that he's going to put on my tombstone, if I predecease him, he's like, not that you're going to have a tombstone, but I'm putting this on your tombstone, and it's going to be, there's just so much to do. So here lies Isolde, and that would be my quote. There's just so much to do. So I've never had that. I imagine if I did what I do when I get stuck. And this is one of those things. I actually said this to a client the other day. I said that there's a big difference between being stuck and being still. And it's really important to delineate that for yourself. But if I feel stuck, if I feel like I can't break through the next thing, I go away. I don't bang my head against the wall and go, oh, I'll never have another idea again. I don't find that productive. So instead, I'll go, I am stuck on this paragraph. I don't know, whatever. And I can't get anywhere, and I feel like nothing is happening, and so I'll go, okay, I'll go for a walk, I'll go pet my cats, I'll go play the guitar, I'll go sing in the shower, I'll go work out, I'll do some yoga, I'll do something that will change my perspective even a little bit, and that will usually get the ball rolling again. And then I always rely on, if I were the kind of person who knew what to say right now, what would I say? And I ask myself that question in the third person. If I knew what to do right now, what would I do? And the answer bubbles up. I rely on Edna, the librarian who lives in my head, to, if I am somehow out of ideas, she will help me. My subconscious is very good at going, have you thought about this? And boom, it's whatever kind of stuck I was in is over really almost before it begins. Sergio, what about you? How are you with this kind of notion?
Shout out Edna real quick.
Woohoo!
That's all right. And so I did think about this, and yeah, the drought, the dry season, as she puts it. I feel like that's a very real thing that I'm sure many artists have gone through, and it's very scary to think about. You know, I think it can be hard to accommodate for your creative passions sometimes, and to make time for it, right? She really talks about making the time for it, and I feel as though I do put time and effort into my creative endeavors, and that's not really a struggle. I think it's just doing more and feeling more confident about it that can be a struggle. If I did have a drought, which honestly is not something I've experienced, I think coming up with ideas is not difficult at the moment and hasn't been. If anything, yeah, I'm just I love to create. So it's not difficult at the moment, thankfully. But if I did go through that, I think much like Isolde, I'd probably try and experience other art and things that I love, things that inspire me, right? So I'd go to concerts, live music. So I love live music. I'd go to museums, maybe even a hike. I love to hike. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I would do all of the above and hope that Inspirato would hit. Yeah, I think that's where I'm coming from. Alan, how about you? How are you feeling about this?
I feel different, I guess. No, I don't know.
Please elaborate.
Please elaborate. No, I feel like, all right. Right now I don't feel like I'm in a drought, but simultaneously I feel like uh it's tough to swim right now.
Mm,
And so maybe now it's like I'm in the eye of the storm and there's a lot of ideas swirling around. So I'm like, where do I focus? What do I do? And so it feels like this calm moment or this like act of stillness. And it doesn't really feel that calm, but in this moment after we've been doing so much, I feel like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? And even though I'm actually doing things. But I had this feeling recently that I sort of discovered where I just understand that sometimes between projects I'll need to go through this sort of like gestation process or a process of like just like letting go of what I've done and easing towards what's next. And that's like a as an actor, it was like always frightening because you're like, what's when is the next thing gonna happen? What's the next thing? It feels a little bit more precarious than that at someone else's whim. Um, but there's always I remember it, I think I talked about it, at the end of a play, there's like this like depression of like, oh, that's over. We've done that and we've expended ourselves and we put all this energy into it. And now it's just in the memories of who's ever seen it and maybe on some recording somewhere, possibly an old VHS, depending on times. Anywho, so I find that droughts can be useful in a way, just sort of like a pause on that energy. But I also know that they can be frightening, and for me, I think like I don't always recognize them as that, or I haven't always recognized them. And I feel like the first time I started doing the morning pages, it unlocked me in a huge way. I was just like, oh, this is a project, and this could be a project, and this is a thing, and I should focus on this part of my life or someone else's life, or like um, there's all these interesting stories out there that I could weave together and start and find and explore and learn more about humanity and what we battle and stuff like that. And so uh I sort of am reminded of that when I started the morning pages. I think I felt a little bit like that Lin-Manuel Miranda thing. It was like, why do you write like you're running out of time? Why do you write like you're running out of time? And when I think I saw that, I was like, why do you write like that? What's going on? Like, what's wrong with you? But then like once everything starts flowing, you're like, I have so much, I have to get this out. Where does it go? And it feels like there will never be a drought. And so I think when then you hit that drought, suddenly it feels like a moment of panic. I don't know, but to me, seeing this in this page just was very comforting. I was like, it happens to all of us. We're gonna go through it. And one other thing I'll say about that is when I did when I started out doing improv, it was just like one of these things where you just go out and you do as much as you can, and you're like at the theaters every night, making things up if you can, or watching people make stuff up, and your brain is just going blah, 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 blah. And you get so much into that, and you're putting out so much art, you're creating so much immediately, it can become almost exhausting, right? And I found myself going through these cycles of quitting just about everything, and then I'd leave like one little taste, so I could be like, okay, I still like this is still something I enjoy. And then I would sort of get me through this period of like needing to reimagine myself as a performer and stuff like that, to rebuild myself. I think I'll give it over back to Megan at this point.
Yeah, I think those are all really good answers. I think for me, I've definitely experienced drought in the past. I think the longest one I had was probably about 7 years after I graduated from college. And I was still creating during that time, but it felt, something about it just didn't feel right. You know, I didn't really have a goal or a structure in mind. I didn't have a plan for my creativity. And I think really because I was denying myself in a lot of ways, any kind of vision for what the future of my creativity might look like, it was really, really hard for me to then think big about my projects, or even small, because, you know, for me, when I can't fit a small project into some bigger picture, it's really hard for me to invest even in that much. And I kept getting stuck in like those kind of loops, and it was really difficult at the time because it was something I really did think about every single day, like that I want to be creating and I can't, or I want to be creating and it doesn't feel like there's anything there to make. And what brought me out of it was really, you know, I don't know if it was any one specific thing. I just know that over time, like that wall that I had slowly broke down, and I was able to once again start thinking about things kind of on a smaller scale. Like rather than, oh, I have to be this type of creative, I could think this is something that I enjoy. I'm going to just make this wreath for Christmas. I remember that was one of the first creative things I really did. And then it was easier to really start thinking about stories again. It was easier to start having ideas and to let those ideas sit and grow into bigger things again. So that it is something that I experienced, but I definitely did not experience it as something that was natural to me, because it didn't feel that way at the time. It felt like it was shameful in a way, because I had always identified so much as a creative person, and it felt like there was something wrong with me when I could create. So, and I think in even in how I've thought about that period of my life since then, I think I've continued to think about it that way. Like this was a time when something was wrong and I fixed it, and that's why I'm doing better now. But her way of defining it instead as kind of a natural process that most creatives go through at one point or another, that was kind of, it was almost freeing in a way, because I sort of was able to reframe it a little bit in my own mind and think, you know, that was a really hard time in my life for a lot of different reasons, many of which had nothing to do with creativity. I mean, I think it was not unreasonable for me to just be struggling a little bit to think big picture at that time. So yeah, I think it did kind of help me rethink that part of my own life and forgive myself a little bit, I guess, for going through that. And yeah, so I want to move on now to.
Ooh, can I say something real quick? Would that be okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jump right in.
Okay, great. So there are a couple of things I wanted to say. If you feel like you're going through a drought or you're stuck like I get, there are a couple of different things. First of all, one of the things that I do in the writers group that we are all in together is I bring these little prompt cards, right? These little object, location, profession. We draw them at random, and then we write a story based on incorporating those three elements. And there are lots of things. I mean, you don't have to You don't have to buy my little cards. There are lots of different ways to find prompts. Go sit outside in a cafe or at a park and people watch and see if that sparks something for you, right? So if you're a writer or you're an artist like with fine arts, take some crayons on a piece of paper and go sit in a park and see if something comes to you to draw. So there are things from the outside coming in that can spark that those creative juices for you. I think I mix metaphors. And the other thing is, and again, I come back to this delightful, amazing writers group that we have. Check in with friends, right? That's something that you can do for yourself. If you're feeling uncertain, if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling like you're going through this creative drought, there might be other people in your circle of friends or other people in your industry, your genre, or whatever, who might know exactly what you're talking about. And you might be able to check in with them, and perhaps together you might be able to inspire each other. So I cannot overstate the importance of seeing who in your community could be a support for you, who you can also support. And back to you, Megan.
Oh, can I just jump in there and piggyback on this? And
Go
I
right
just-
ahead.
Thank you. I just want to point out that how cool it is that the creative thing that sort of got you out of the drought, Megan, was the Christmas wreath, and just how sort of abstract that feels for me to be as like a writer, to think about that as being like, oh, I'll make a Christmas wreath and then maybe I'll write again. But there's something about doing something, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're great at these instinctually, but something you're less familiar with, and going in and just letting yourself explore, and it can like open up your creative juices, because I think we get these ideas of how art is supposed to be and how things are supposed to be. And what makes the youth so good at technology is they have like no expectation of how it should work. So they just go in and figure out what works for them, and then they
Sure.
make that the new standard. And I'm like, oh, that's cool that you figured that out, guys. Guys and dolls, or whatever. Guys and dolls, that's to people of the world. The
Folks,
youth.
folks.
Folks.
And you know what?
Yeah.
I am a living, breathing embodiment of that right now. I'm doing that art piece a day thing for a year, and that's exactly what it is. I'm allowing myself to just be in beginner's mind and see what I come out with. And I've had a bunch of people buy a bunch of those pieces now, which is just
Cool.
hilarious to me, and also very like humbling and awesome. But it was not what I expected. I did it to hold accountability. I put it up on my social, and I'm doing it every day. I'm doing an art piece every single day, and I'm allowing myself to suck. You know, I say it all the time. Even if you're in a drought, do something that absolutely sucks. But even that tiny small step, even if it sucks, is still a step in the right direction. Sorry, Megan. Please, back to you.
No, I think this is a really good and important conversation to have, because there are so many ways which we can get in our own way, especially with that whole idea, really, and the expectations we hold ourselves to. I know that's definitely been the case for me in the past. So I wanted to switch gears now to the concept of fame and competition, which I think it's really interesting that she once again chose to put these sections in this specific chapter, in the self-protection chapter. So I think one quote that really stood out to me here is, fame encourages us to believe that if it hasn't happened yet, it won't happen, which it's kind of like the why bother effect. Like if I haven't already accomplished this thing, then there's no point now in getting there. And I think even as someone who, I think fame has never been like my value really around creativity. I've definitely been plagued in the past by that feeling that, oh, if I was going to be successful with a specific project, then I would have somehow found a way by now. And I've definitely kind of fallen into that self-defeating thinking pattern before. So I would love to hear from each of you what the concept of fame means to you. And if it's, however you think about it, if that's essential to your experience of your work and your feeling of success. Let's start with Sergio.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that you're all great, and I really appreciate the supportive nature.
Thank you, Sergio.
Thank
I
you.
really, oh, no worries. I really appreciate the supportive nature of all of your insight. As far as fame goes, Fame is not the same as success, is something she says. And I love that quote because I agree. I don't think for me personally that I need to be famous to be successful in life. Ultimately, if I'm being honest, I wouldn't mind being famous. I hope that's okay to share. I think that is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be nice if I'm being honest, but I don't, again, I don't think it's necessary for me, especially at this point where, not that I don't like being on screen or, acting was something I was very into, and I'm a musician, so I played live music before, and that stuff is fun, but I find myself growing it into someone, and I've mentioned this before, someone who wants to be more behind the scenes, the one who's maybe writing the story or helping direct or consult or what have you. And as far as competition goes, I think that especially at this point, or especially in the creative world, can just be toxic, just very toxic. So I try not to do that or think in those terms with my fellow artists and colleagues. Sometimes there are like famous artists that I might hate on and such, but as far as people that I get to know and get close with, it's more of like a how can I learn from them kind of attitude that I have. I don't want to compete with them. I want to support them, and hopefully they'll reciprocate and support me as well. So yeah, the competition stuff, I leave that to like my Xbox and PlayStation, for when I'm gaming.
I love
And
it.
that's a whole different story as far as competition goes. But that's how I feel about it. Alan, how about you? How are you feeling about fame and competition?
Fame and competition. I think you can't get into the fame school if you don't compete, is if I remember correctly. You have to audition and you have to go hard
Mm.
for fame. No, I'm sorry. I always feel like I have to be funny for some reason. Okay. Fame is I think I'm with you, Sergio. I think I've denied this feeling that I would like to be somewhat famous. And I think and this to me is like that for sort of like fear of success comes in, where you think about it like, well, what actually goes along with fame and what's
Mm.
required of you when you're famous, or what's taken from
Hmm.
you when you're famous. And not to say that it's a terrible place to be. You can have fame and not wealth, and you can
Hmm.
fame and not health, and there's like a lot of different ways. But I think what she says in there is like everyone wants to be we all like credit where credit is due. And I think it's nice. I think
Hmm.
that's like desire to be recognized for being good at what you do, and to be recognized by um, not just your friends and family, but like a wider audience, right? Like, or feels like people care about you, or people are invested in you, right? Um, and so that aspect of it feels nice. And there's this feeling of like, oh well, it didn't happen for me now. Why would it ever happen? And oh, it's so sad. But also like it's okay. It's like I actually had a pretty good life. I've had a good life, and I will continue to live a very
Hmm.
interesting good life if
And
I'm
it's never
not
too late.
famous. Yeah, it's never too late. And there's I could always be just somebody who is famous and when I'm 80 or something. Who knows? It's not my main drive at this point. Like I want to do what I want to do. I want to do the work I want to do. And I want that to be I want that work to matter to me and to people who work on it and to people who are watch it, right? I want it to be important in some way. And if that comes with fame, I guess I'll deal with that when when it happens.
Mhm.
And if not, well, I'll cry myself to sleep wishing I did. Um, Competition, I think it's a weird thing. I think it is a feeling we're taught to go into, and the only way that people supposedly get better is through competition. And I think it's a way for us to see what kind of benchmarks are out there. Like we should look at competition as a way to push ourselves rather than a way to like um judge ourselves,
I like
uh
that.
right? Because like if someone else can do it, maybe you can't do it as well as them, but you know that it can be done, and there's an area you can explore and see what you're capable of doing in that same area. And we can always, by putting, by I don't know. I sort of lost my competition. Yeah, it's just like it's not good. It's not good to see what other people are doing and then be like, well, I don't have that, so I don't have everything, because you just can't do everything. You can't be everywhere. And so I think like that feeling of like, well, I don't have that, is a it's not going to help you. When if you say like, well, how do I get that? Or like, oh, that's awesome that they got that, I want to root for them and then support them and whatever else they do while I can, and hopefully they'll support me, and building that community is going to be more important. I think that's lost amongst like a lot of actors and comedians. It can feel a little bit like more really like it's me or you. And when you learn that you're going to get what you're right for and they're going to get what they're right for, it takes a little of that pressure off, and you realize that, you know, there's just different people, so different things are going to work better. I hope that that's going to cover me for this subject. Isolde, I think it's time for you to come in here about your fame and competition woes and excitements.
It's so interesting. Thank you, Alan. I think of fame as a byproduct, if you will. I don't particularly want fame, but I think if you have a mission and a message to reach a lot of people, it'll help if you have a certain amount of fame, right? But we also have social media influencers, and those people, you know, go, oh, I use this watch. See? And companies will pay you to do that. And those people have a certain amount of fame. And so therefore they can trade on that fame to sell things, and people will buy them, because if you know, Charlie XYZ on Instagram, and I don't know if there is a Charlie XYZ, I'm just picking something out of a hat, is an influencer, and she says, hey, you should drink this soda because I like it, and people buy it, then she has a certain amount of fame, but she might not have a lot of substance. And one of the things that you hear a lot is people who are influencers who started out as TikTok dancers who now want to go, but actually I'm a psychologist and I want you to come get therapy with me. People are like, no, honey, you're a TikTok dancer. I don't know if I want to get therapy from you. So it depends on what you want your fame to bring you. And I really believe that if your focus is fame, the work really becomes about that instead of the work being about the work. And as far as well, she says something that I think is really great. She says many hits are sure things only in retrospect. So giving yourself the opportunity to try, to create, to do the work, to be in the muck of creation without seeking fame, you have no idea. Some things hit that you're like fuzz bidgets. What are those things called? The little things kids play with.
Fidget spinners.
Fidget spinners. Thank you. I'm like fuzz bidget. No, that can't be it. Anyway, they were huge for a little while. They were huge. And now nobody's using them. Why? Because they were fly by night and then they're gone. And Rich was just showing me that now they have little reusable silicone bubble wrap. Like you can get something about the size of a fidget spinner, 5 inches around or something, and it's little bubble wrap that you can pop, and then it reinflates and you can pop it again.
Are you kidding me?
I am
That's
not kidding you.
amazing. Oh
I
my
am
God.
not kidding you. And see, now fidget
You
spinner,
should sell
everyone's
that
like,
on your site, whatever it is.
but see, that's the thing. Like now we're like, oh, I want the bubble wrap. My mother can sit for hours and play with bubble wrap, hours. And she will like waste a ton of plastic because she can't help herself. But now there's reusable silicone. In fact, I think that her birthday's coming up, and I'm going to absolutely send her one of those silicone bubble wrap things for her birthday, because people love that. But we're not even talking about fidget spinners anymore. Now we're talking about this bubble wrap, and everyone's like, oh, this is the cool and latest, greatest thing. So I think that, again, the fame itself isn't much unless you have substance underneath it. And fame can be really fleeting if you don't have that foundation, that substance underneath, that is the creative work that is really your heart and soul somehow. And then as far as competition, I want to read the quote that she has in the book. She says, the spirit of competition, as opposed to the spirit of creation, often urges us to quickly winnow out whatever doesn't seem like a winning idea. This can be very dangerous. It can interfere with our ability to carry a project to term, because a competitive focus encourages us snap judgments, thumbs up or thumbs down. And because you don't know if it's going to be a hit before you even start, you might sort of throw away ideas that might have been amazing because you don't see them having legs immediately. I also prefer things as far as competition. I prefer competing against myself. Like, can I do better than I did yesterday, as opposed to competing against other people? That's just who I am. But I want to say something else. There was, back in college, and this is where competition can go into creation. I had there was a phenomenal movement professor named Barry Goldman. He worked with Lecoq. He's incredible, and he lives in France and works in France now. But he was teaching at the University of Michigan Theater Department when I was there. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because another professor, phenomenal, Patricia Boyette, was having auditions. She was auditioning for a Sam Shepard play, Angel Falls, I think. And no, City of Angels. She was auditioning for City of Angels, Sam Shepard. And she said it's going to be like a Broadway audition. And everybody had to learn their monologues. And she was like, it's going to be like an actual casting call. You're going to be there doing the exact same thing you'd be doing if you were on 42nd Street and trying to audition. And the problem was that she chose a play that had a bunch of male roles and one female, and she did not cast she didn't do anything like, oh, some of these male roles can be done by women. So there were 6 guys and 1 woman, and there were lots of women who couldn't do anything. And so Barry, being Barry, went, well, I'm going to come up with some other way of doing this. And so he decided to direct, we were sort of the guerrilla production, if you will, Antigone. And he not only went through that, but he decided to take Sophocles, Brecht, and Ennui's Antigone and mush them all together in one play. And he was going to have 3 different Antigones in the show. So 3 different actresses got to be Antigone, one for Ennui, one for Sophocles, one for Brecht, because he went, you know what, these are all incredible actresses. They got to the very last bit of auditions for City of Angels, and they didn't get in, but they should get something. So let's create our own. And we created our own. I was the AD. I was the assistant director for that show. And we created our own show that was incredibly successful. And we extended the run of the show, and it was wonderful. So remember that competition can make people feel like crap, but you can also take it and transform it into creativity and really do something that is going to blossom into something incredible. Megan, back to you.
That is such a magical story, because I think it really encapsulates the best part of creativity is that we're allowed to be creative. We're allowed to use what power we do have to create more seats at the table, and not just view everything as a zero-sum game that, there can only be one woman in this particular role, like it's why not flip the script and redefine those
Mm-hmm.
old rules that have very historically denied a lot of people opportunities. So yeah, I think for me, something Julia Cameron says that really, something she says that really resonates with me in this section is what we are really scared of is that without fame, we won't be loved. And that resonated for me a little bit. I've never really wanted to be a famous artist just for the sake of being famous, like that idea doesn't really resonate with me so much that I want my work to matter in some way. I want it to touch someone. I want people to be affected by my work. I want people to enjoy it. And to me, that's the fear that I think functioned as a block for me sometimes. Not that I won't be famous, or I don't feel like I need to win like a major literary prize or anything like that. But the idea that I might just like write into the void forever and like nobody would ever see or consume my work or get anything out of it, that is really scary for me. And when I go down that path, it's that can sometimes bring me to a point where it gets difficult to remain motivated. And I think she talks about it in that way a little bit, in the sense that it's really important to value art for its own sake, because anything beyond that requires the participation of another person, and you can't always control that. So I think this is something to be aware of if that's also a thing that you feel. And of course, it's natural to want to make things that other people will enjoy, but the most important person you should be impressing with your work or pleasing with your work should be you. And if everything you're making only has the audience in mind, if it's only for other people, then that's probably isn't going to be satisfying. I mean, maybe for some people it is, but for me, I think that if I only made things for other people, when I've sort of allowed myself to fall into that mindset and I've started making things specifically so other people will consume them, I haven't enjoyed my own work as much. So that's always something I've had to think about when I'm thinking about my projects and planning them. And yeah, in terms of competition, I think I really don't view the world as a zero-sum game. I think there's always room for other artists. There's always room for other writers. And anyone that I can help or empower in my own way just means that there's more beautiful things in the world to appreciate. And I think that especially now, there's really no reason for there to be only a few seats at the table, other than because of those historical ideas of who deserves opportunities, and that any of us who have those opportunities, we can find ways to share them with other people and to make that table longer instead of just keeping it the same size because it's always been that way, And yeah, I try to keep that in mind when if those feelings of that maybe there aren't enough seats ever crop up in my mind. Yeah.
You make new tables.
Yeah, make new tables. Why not, right?
Absolutely.
So I think the last thing I wanted to do before we kind of sign off for the night is to check in with everyone on morning pages and the artist date. So let's see. Alan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say first, if you get the chance to have a therapist who is a TikTok dancer, there's absolutely no reason why you should not take that. This is someone who is an unblocked artist and is creative, and you might as well sit down with someone who is putting out energy like that. Why not? I also think like fame needs to be like allowed to be transient. Like we sort of feel like it's like this locked situation when you're either famous or you're not. And there's the truth of it is people sort of move in and out of that sphere, just like the fidget spinners or something like that. It sort of brings into consciousness. So I think like if we allow things to be like, oh, this is like a moment I could be famous for here, and then like who knows, I can disappear and come back, or I can like build a following. There's like different levels of fame. Anyway, sorry. I on my morning pages, I think I had a tough week this past week because I was traveling. I went down to see my sister in North Carolina, and then my quote unquote foster brother Justin and his family, and Brandy, and I just sent them the link to the whole show, so I feel like I should give them all shout outs. But anyway, it was
Shout out Randy.
Shout out Brandy and Justin and Addie and Dylan, all of you guys. Kathy, of course. All right, stop.
Of course.
My sister, of course, Kathy. She's the best. So I think I did have a couple of days where I just didn't do it this week. I think I did it last week. And then on my artist date, I don't know if we talked about it last week, but I went to see my friend's art exhibit, and I also went to see another friend's improv show. And then this week, Saturday, I went to see on Sugarland. It was like the night before it closed. And that was really cool. It was like it was back at the New York Theater Workshop, which is where I had first done my show Trailers that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, which I think is why it's fresh on my mind. But it felt like this weird return to the theater, and not just Broadway, but like the downtown theaters. And I was like, there's no drinks or snack service. So you just walk in and watch a play. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. No $17 popcorn or anything. Okay, I'll just enjoy this art. And it was really this amazing, impactful play, and it was cool to see actors do that stuff again, to perform. And it's this great choral energy to the play, and it's this examination of how do we let go of pain and suffering when we don't get to say goodbye. In a way, it's sort of like a lot about these dead soldiers that never came back from the war, and they celebrate. Sugarland is the place where they mark the celebration of these people's lives, but without their bodies. So they make little artifacts to represent them. So it's like a bunch of different artifacts that, because this war is taking all these members of the community away. So very moving play, very cool. The direction was really great, and just a really impactful thing. So that was, it was for me a great return to, as I said, theater. So that's where I am. Is that everything? Is that all we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, good. Then I'll pass it over to Sergio. Thanks, Megan.
Alan, I just want to apologize that you weren't able to indulge in some expensive popcorn while you watched the play.
Now I want popcorn.
Hopefully
send
you
you
can get
some.
it for hopefully you can get it for less than $17.
I refuse.
I think you might be able to send Ozolda some for less than $17.
I'll see what I can do.
I have some. I can make it. I have the power. All right. Sorry, Sergio. Go for it.
No worries. I am happy to hear that you enjoyed the play though overall, and that sounds like a fantastic time. So for me, this has been definitely a really busy week. It's my birthday week is about
Happy
to conclude
birthday.
tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. It's also my brother's and my first nephew's birthday as well this week.
Wow.
Lots of Pisces in the family.
And my brother's
Shout-
birthday was this week.
Hey, shout out to the Pisces.
Yes.
So as I've mentioned before, we had some family from PR, Puerto Rico, come over. So we did a whole joint kind of party, which was really nice to hang out with my family and some family that I haven't seen since I was a baby, and have some drinks and did some dancing with my aunt and stuff. And yeah, that was really fun. And not just that time, but I was able to do a lot this week as far as celebration goes. And I'm really grateful because I'm not going to get too into it, but last year was definitely the loneliest birthday I've ever had. I spent it basically by myself, and this year was not that. So I really appreciate everyone who reached out and showed me some birthday love. Gracias
Yay.
very mucho. Te quiero. More than you know. And yeah, so very busy. I did go to this comic book show or comic convention, King Kong, with some friends, and I got to meet some YouTube content creators that I'm really into. And I even got to take the birthday shot with one of the dudes, Jay from Pressable Defects. Shout out Pressable Defects on YouTube. And
Nice.
yeah, it was really cool. Great way to start the convention. And I also got to talk to somebody from CBSI, which is comicbookinvestments.com, a really great website. And I talked to him about writing, and we actually set up a phone meeting to talk more about it, to see if I can write for the website. So I'm really excited for that. Hopefully it works out. So wish me some luck as far
Yeah.
as that goes.
Yes,
Awesome,
get
Sergio.
it.
Good luck.
Thank
Network
you.
boy.
Yeah, you already know. I'm trying.
Good.
So I say all that to say that as far as morning pages go, I did, as Megan says, and I love when she says this, I did atrocious with my morning pages this week. I think I might have did about 4 days, I want to say, which is definitely the worst week for me since we started. And yeah, it's just been a really busy week. I will try to do better with these last few weeks in the course. And as far as my artist date goes, I did do a bunch of stuff this week. But I feel like what really felt like the artist date for me, one of the solo activities I did this week is I went to White Plains, which is in Westchester, New York. And there's a lot of places, a lot of stores, malls, and food and stuff over there. And I stopped at the Sam Ash Music Store, which is
Yes.
one of my favorite stores. I know they have one in the city. I think I'm not sure if there's more than one, but it's a store I haven't been to in a while. And it's a store that I used to go into a lot just to look at the instruments and play around. And yeah, I told myself, I'm just going to go to Sam Ash. It wasn't on the agenda for the trip there, but I did that, and I ended up staying in there for about an hour. And it was really, really great. I played messed around with a bunch of instruments, fell in love with the acoustic electric Stratocaster Fender that was just amazing. It looked beautiful. It sounded beautiful. There was another guy playing in the acoustic room on the other end. And then at one point, we kind of just started jamming with each other, but not speaking to each other or saying it, but he was playing something and I was playing something, and I felt like he was following me. And then I started following him, and that was just a really cool moment. And then,
Oh, nice! Yay!
yeah, it
I
was
love
pretty
that.
sweet. And now that's just the guitar I have to put on my list of very expensive instruments that I would love to own one day. And I
Mm.
also went to the keyboard area and played around with some keyboards. And there was this little kid, maybe 9, 10 years old, that was messing around, and he sounded fantastic. And he came over to me and started talking about some of the stuff that he was trying to do. And I told him how great he sounded. And then he started playing, and I was on the other side on another set of keys, and I started playing just some open chords to follow the kind of things that he was doing. And then I gave him a little lesson kind of and tried to teach him how to play a couple open chords that could maybe help him in his journey. And it was really cool. It was really awesome. He was great. I can only imagine how amazing he's going to be when he gets older. So yeah, that was really inspiring. So really great artist date. I feel like I've been going on for a bit. I apologize. Isolda,
Oh.
how was your week? Did you get to your morning pages, and did you have an artist date?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. First of all, I love the jam session. I think that's awesome. That gladdens the cockles of my heart. So
Definitely.
that's so cool. And I saw your posts about King Kong. That looked really neat too. Yeah, I don't go to cons often, but I think that they're just a lot of fun. As far as my stuff, yes, I did morning pages. I think I did all 7 days, and my artist date was a sort of a dual thing. At first, I went to Barnes and Noble, and I just
Love that
looked
space.
at all the books and had a fabulous time looking at books of different genres, going to some of the older areas, looking at all the latest, and got the latest by Brad Metzer, who's a University of Michigan alum, who was there right after I was. So that was kind of cool. And it happened to be autographed, which I thought was neat. And then, and I had a gift card from my birthday back in October that I used up for this, so that was really cool. And then I went. The Barnes and Noble is by Union Square, and then I walked up Broadway, and on Broadway between Union Square and Madison Square Park there are a whole bunch of design stores and furniture stores that are really unusual. So I just went into all of these different design and decorating and interior design stores, and like lighting fixtures and different kinds of furniture and lots of different colors. And so I had a really great time looking at that. And one of the things that happened out of morning pages this week that I wanted to say, I have been playing Fruit Ninja on my phone for years, and I've gotten to the point on my phone that there is no way I can ever use up any of the bonuses. I have played long enough that I cannot go any higher except for just playing the game. But I had 2,800 little strawberries, which is huge, 30 some odd little peaches, and a whole bunch of little bomb deflectors, like 3,500 or something, ridiculous amount. So I could keep playing for the rest of my life, and I'm only growing, right? There was no way for me to lose the game. And this week, I deleted the game from my phone, and all of that data, all of those bonuses are
No.
gone. Yes. No,
Oh
it's
my
good.
God.
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's because what I found myself doing was, I feel kind of tired. I'm going to play some Fruit Ninja. And I'm on the subway. I'm going to play some Fruit Ninja. And now when I'm on the subway, instead, I am listening to a podcast or reading a book or people watching or seeing if I can overhear people saying really cool stuff. So these last few days, I have enjoyed a Fruit Ninja-less existence, and I did not realize how much of my sort of I feel like being, sort of brain dead for a little while, how much of that was being used up by I'm just going to play some Fruit Ninja. It was where I was ending up rather than where I intended to go, and I feel terrific about it. So there you go. Megan, how about you? What's your check-in for the week on that?
Well, first of all, I congratulate you for the untold courage that I'm sure it took for you to actually take that step.
It did. It took a lot of courage, actually.
Wait, can I just say that I think if you just take that chunk where you start talking about what you had accumulated in Fruit Ninja and then go all the way to the point where you delete it and say like turn that into some sort of NFT, that would be worth it would be the worth would be invaluable to people who know you, but I think when you started talking about Fruit Ninja and your collection of peaches and strawberries,
Yes.
oh my God, I'm dead right now. I love that.
Well, I am a newly minted NFT artist, so maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll mint that as an NFT.
There you go. Back to you, Megan. Sorry.
Okay,
Back to you,
so
Megan.
I actually, for only the second time, I actually completed a morning pages journal. It's like I started this journal right
Yay.
before we started this journey together. I had
Wow.
one other morning pages journal before that, and it lasted me for an entire year, which should tell you something about how often I was actually doing them and how many pages like I would usually get through in a day. But once we started this project together, I got myself a new journal, and it lasted me until now. I filled it up, and so as my artist date this week, I went shopping for a new notebook, and
Hey.
this
Ooh.
was really fun and exciting for me because I went to a new bookstore which I'd never been to before called Rizzoli Bookstore in Midtown Manhattan, and it's this beautiful, beautiful Italian place. Not all the books there are in Italian, but they have like this huge Italian section, and it's really kind of a small but just lovingly curated bookstore with this huge section of gorgeous notebooks. So I wanted to go there and I wanted to touch every notebook, and I did. I touched every notebook and I found the perfect morning pages notebook for me. And then after that, I was really, really excited about my morning pages this week. So I actually did 6 days. One day it just didn't work out, but I was really proud that I not only used my artist date to purchase a new notebook, but that I then stuck to my habit for 6 days this week. And yeah, so I think that covers it for this chapter. I feel
Wow.
I feel good about that, and I'm really excited for these next couple of weeks that I think are going to be, well, I'm really excited about where we're going to go, where Julia Cameron is going to take us in these last couple of weeks that we have in this course. And I'm proud of the work that we've done together to get this far. I mean, I knew that we would eventually get here, but I couldn't quite picture it in my mind how different and the same it would feel, I think. So is there anything you guys would like to say to close us out before we take it away?
I just want to say that you did such an amazing job, as I knew you would. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank you, Isolde and Alan, for being so great and giving so much insight. And as Megan said, I'm really excited to see where this journey takes us. We're in the last few weeks, the last stretch here. I hope you've been doing well, listener, along this process. Please don't be afraid to let us know. And also don't be afraid to check out all the links in the description and rate an episode 5 stars, or rate all the episodes 5 stars.
Woohoo.
Thank you so much. Isolde, Alan, anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
Thanks for, having me, Megan. Great job. Thanks for hosting. Very well curated. And I apologize again for disappearing. Hopefully nobody notices. That's
Oh,
my
we
dream.
noticed. We
We
missed you.
always
Ah,
notice.
goodness. And I'm gonna be looking out for that TikTok therapist, but don't tell my real therapist. I mean, my
Hey.
Yeah, I am so grateful to all of you for being on this journey with me. It's super cool. It reminds me of my favorite proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I love that, and I wish I had a citation. I know it's from Africa, but I don't know. There's no original citation, but I just think that that's brilliant. And having you all as my cohorts, as my comrades, as we go through this, has been wonderful. Megan, I think you did a phenomenal job hosting. Thank you so much for taking that on. And I want to say something to you if you're listening. Please remember, if you're trying to do this by yourself, as you can tell, we're having a great time, even when it's challenging, doing it together. But if you're trying to do it by yourself, like Sergio said, feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. I think they would love to hear from you. If you have questions or if you have ideas or thoughts, please, please, please get in touch. And also be aware that you can go at your own pace. This does not have to be something that is going to be done in 12 weeks. You can take your time and cut yourself a lot of slack, because if you are really blocked as a creative, if you find yourself really afraid, the only way through it is through it, yes. And you can do it if you take small, tiny, consistent steps. There you go. Megan, back to you to close it out.
All right. Well, I have really enjoyed spending this time with you guys, and I really thank each of you for your vulnerability and openness through this whole project process, sharing not just with me, but with everyone listening. And yeah, it was really an honor to host again today. Thank you so much, Isolde, for that opportunity.
My pleasure.
And I'm excited now to pass it back to you. You are back in charge.
I'm never in charge. Don't you know that? I thought you would have learned that by now. Yeah. So I am, as I just mentioned, I'm really great. I mean, I know we probably sound like broken records. Oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. But really, gratitude to me is it's something that I keep plumbing new depths with, because I find that the more time I take to sort of count my blessings, the more I appreciate the things in my life that are wonderful, both large and small. I am super grateful that you joined us for this episode. Please feel free to go back and listen to the other ones. I'd love it if you'd rate and review an episode like Sergio suggested. You can do it on Spotify, you can do it on Podchaser, you can do it on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. That would be really cool and wonderful. And we're going to be back next week and talking about chapter 11 of the book. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know what it's called, but we will be talking about chapter 11. And then it's a 12-week process. So shortly thereafter, we will be finishing this process and the episodes will be here. But I want to say now's the time to get in on this and really get going and start your creative recovery, or as I like to call it, your creative discovery. And until next time, I am Isolde Trachtenberg on behalf of Megan Vasilis, Sergio Giovanni, and Alan Fessenden, reminding you to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2022. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, remember to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind.